Okay, hey, welcome to an episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. To have a really cool update for you guys from the brand AVI-8. A little about them. They're actually the sister brand to Spinnaker, but instead of nautical and diver-oriented themes, AVI-8 focuses on aviation and pilot-style watches. Now, within kind of that aviation and pilot style, I'd say this watch even crosses over into the genre of an everyday adventure watch because of its layout. And in terms of something you can wear on your everyday adventure, some key characteristics in design language, when you want something within the genre, of course, you're going to find something that is both sporty, legible, and also built tough. And this has all of that in spades. This is known as their CVRT or covert 3775 Alpha or 3775A. And this is essentially a design collaboration with the Worn and Wound Creative Services group, and it's really built to endure any mission while being as functional as it is stylish. These go for $450 direct. You can actually get them directly through AVI-8 or through Worn and Wound through their shop, which is pretty cool. And this sample was kindly provided by the brand AVI-8 for the purpose of this video review. I will say they didn't even reach out to me. I reached out to them when I saw this one. I do, on the channel, I've reviewed a few AVI-8s in the past, more Spinnakers than AVI-8s, just because I feel like design-wise, they just resonate a bit with me more. But this one really stood out, so I was excited to get a hands-on with it. And I mean, I think even from a marketing perspective, they haven't really said too much to highlight this watch. I mean, it's the size. I mean, besides the style, obviously, I think that kind of markets itself, but the fact is this is a 37.8 millimeter diameter watch, and then also it has a nice thin Miyota movement inside, and this is barely, this is at just under 11 millimeters thick. Also, it has a hardened steel case, which is very cool. So these are kind of a lot of the different things that you would want to find in a watch you could wear every day. And yeah, I think this one's pretty cool. So with that said, let's go zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, guys. Ooh. Yes, very handsome piece. I think not too loud. And of course, AVI-8's themes typically are going to be pretty seriously on that aviation side, where I feel like this is a bit more subdued, and that's by design. Of course, with a name like Covert, right? Being what this is, I think it does a great job of being just that, quite covert and under the radar. I did do a live unboxing of this piece, so it does come in a pretty nice presentation in terms of the packaging, but some people mentioned that maybe this strap wasn't for them. I don't think it is for everybody, but I do like that integrated style, and I know from the top down you're looking at this and thinking, wow, it has kind of long lugs, but you can see they really turn down. So all that's really doing is making it easier when it comes to wearing pass-through straps, which this does come with a very nice heavy-duty nylon pass-through strap. As you guys can see, nicely signed, even multi-finished down to the milled tang buckle there. So very, very cool that they do provide two strap options. I'm going to focus on this one though, because it's pretty awesome, I think, as is. And if you're not crazy about this type of style of strap, then I think it does have 20 millimeter lugs, so you can swap it out quite easily with various different straps. And I might even try another one on, just again to give you an idea of what this might look like with just less of an integrated style. Now, in terms of dimensions, my calipers get 37.8 millimeters in diameter, 10.7 millimeters thick, and then 45.7 millimeters lug to lug. This is a hard-coated 316L stainless steel case, which actually has three different finishes. It is brushed, polished, and matte blasted. So you have satin brush, matte blast, as well as high polished bevels, and that's just on the finishing side. I guess you could also consider the black coated bezel grip there, although it's not a turning bezel. It is there, and it is quite nice and very highly executed. Look at that diamond pattern there. Very cool. Also, you're probably noticing this kind of cabochon style crown, which is nice and kind of ties into this blacked out aesthetic without it being fully blacked out, which is going to make it ultimately more versatile in more types of situations. Now, it does have a flat sapphire with an inner anti-reflective coating. This crown is a push-pull, so it's not screw down, but you still get that 10 atmospheres or 100 meters of water resistance, which is quite nice. The knurling is quite easy here. It does feel like, to me, like I kind of wish it would have been a screw down, just for that more everyday feel. But with how thin everything is here and compartmentalized, I'm fine with it being a push pull. Now, in terms of the movement inside, it's going to be an automatic Miyota 9015, which has a 42-hour power reserve, although you can't see it here. You just get some nice little military-like specs there. And it does have a 4 hertz sweep, or 28,800 vibrations per hour in terms of that beat rate. And you can see very nice, smooth sweeping seconds hand there. Getting into some other details here, guys. Nice matte black dial, and you can see these 3D applied indices. You do have the date at the 4.5 there. In some of the renders, it actually shows it with a parallel date, which I think would have been nicer. I'm not sure what ended up happening. Maybe this first batch they decided to go with kind of the offset date. I don't have an issue with it as is, but I do think that with the parallel date disc, it would have been just that much better. Or, you know, maybe a no date option altogether, because they could have done something right with the 9039 movement, which would have been fine as well. Although I think this integrated date is going to help this watch sell more, because typically more people buy watches with dates, but enthusiasts seem to lean more towards no dates. So I think there's a case to be made for either way. Now, the handset is nicely brushed, as you guys can see, for the hour and minute hand. And then you do have that painted seconds hand there with that nice kind of flat gray. And then you do have the red tip, which is, again, quite handsome. You're getting 10 atmospheres or 100 meters of water resistance. You're getting a 20 millimeter lug width, although the site shows it as 24. I get about 23 and a half of a little step out flare here, which does make the strap, again, just follow the lines of the case. And you can see this is poised to be really tapered down and turned down to really sit well on wrists, including much smaller wrists than my own. So very cool from that perspective. You do have it tapering down to about 16 millimeters at this beautifully signed and multi-finished pin buckle. And it is also nicely milled, nicely signed, nicely finished. I don't know if it's hardened. I would assume not so, because they didn't really advertise that. Oh, sorry about that. Let me give it a couple of quick wipes here to really get it optimally cleaned up for you. Very nice. And then, yeah, the fact that this is a watch with a hard coating on it, I do like that, especially for something in this kind of everyday realm. This 4 o'clock crown and simpler setup kind of reminds me of some of the vintage Seiko watches from kind of the Vietnam era. But without it being an homage at all. I think this is just really smartly done. It does remind me of Seiko in terms of things like this beautiful undercutting here, which is going to make this watch wear even better on wrist, because you're going to have less coming into contact with your wrist, especially, you know, and during activities where you're going to be flexing your wrist or anything like that. Now, back to let me give the quick breakdown here. So with that 20 millimeter lug, you're also going to have a 20 millimeter heavy duty nylon NATO style strap, brushed hardware, signed pickable, signed pin buckle, etc. So with that said, let's actually get it on the wrist and see how it wears. Okay, as you can see on my 7.5 inch wrist, or 19 centimeter in circumference wrist, I think this wears quite handsomely. Look at that. nicely rounded organic turn downs on those lugs. That nice stepped out flare really gives you, again, more of an integrated look that does give you quite a bit of wrist presence, guys. I mean, this is probably the most wrist presence I've gotten on a wristwatch underneath 38 millimeters on my wrist, because of the design on those lugs, because of the flare on that integrated style strap. So I think this is very cool. And then even the texturing there gives you a bit of a kind of retro styling to it, where, yeah, I could see a lot of different characters and kind of action, types of situations where somebody wears a watch like this. I think this thing, design-wise, is really well done. So kudos to AVI-8, as well as, of course, the Worn & Wound Creative Services team, because clearly they did their homework. This appeals to me as, a veteran of the United States Marine Corps who saw a fair amount of deployment time during my days as an active duty Marine. So I'll say, in terms of thematically, this is something that appeals. Look at that. Look at how flat it lays on the wrist, the nice curvature, the organic lines, and then look at that undercut. So I can just get a whole lot of wrist flex, and I don't have to worry about anything digging in. And of course, most people are going to wear this watch on their left wrist because they're going to be right-handed. Me, I'm left-handed, so I wear my watches on my right wrist. So that crown is even less of an issue for me, but I think it would be very smartly placed for many more of you. But of course, if I get my wrist a bit too close to the camera lens, you're going to notice a fair amount of perspective distortion. It's going to make the watch just seem a lot larger than it actually is. But if I keep my wrist nice and low, all of a sudden, hey, you're seeing more of the sides of the strap, more of the sides of my wrist. There's going to be less of that distortion, and the watch is going to seem more centered. So what I'll do is keep my wrist nice and low, and then just tighten up the frame here so that you guys can get still a detailed look, but just add a bit of a true aspect ratio as to how this may lay on your own wrist. And as you guys can see, look at the thinness there. Look at the organic drape on there. Very nice. Of course, there's some fingerprint smudges. Let me give it a quick wipe here off camera so that you guys can really appreciate the fine details when it comes to those high polished bevels. Look at that. Nice and sharp, even with that hard coating. So very, very cool. And again, for those of you that might think, well, with that flare, maybe the watch is going to wear too big, let's go ahead and swap out the strap and see how it wears on another strap option. Okay, here's a little magic for you. Check that out. So now you don't have that step out. So now this is going to wear a lot more traditional. And look at that. The lines are very nice. I actually do have it on this Anchor strap company, FKM, which I've reviewed on the channel before. They're actually local to me out in Oceanside, right near Camp Pendleton. So big fan of, supporting local brands. And I think this just pairs beautifully. Look at that. It gives you kind of that hybrid strap style because you do have the textured patterning there. But of course, you're going to get all of the durability and, high heat resilience and whatnot that you would get from an FKM rubber strap. So very, very cool. And I think, again, flows, and you can see a bit more of that traditional style versus that kind of kick out that you get from this strap. Also, this strap does have a bit of a kind of matted texture to it that can be a bit dusty. I wouldn't call it a dust magnet, but it is close. It's right there. This has a bit more of a softer silicone style of feel to it versus, like, let's say an FKM rubber or a vulcanized rubber by comparison. So something like this FKM is going to be a very nice option. But with that said, let's go ahead, get this off the wrist, set up for some loom shots, the light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. As you can see, a very nice lume. Definitely more than sufficient for a nice small watch like this. Very, very legible. Could it be brighter? Sure, but again, this isn't some deep diving watch that needs to be having extreme, low depth type of murky visibility. This is going to be something that will typically be used at a capacity more like a field watch or a pilot's watch, which this level of lume is going to be more than enough. But one thing I always like to work in is going to be a bit of a low light transition so that you're able to kind of get a look at what this looks like in less than optimal lighting, because you're always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. And of course, one of the nice things about me swapping out the straps is now this watch can lay flat, because with the integrated, you do kind of have that built-in kind of curvature that is going to be flexing around the wrist for absolute comfort. In this case, though, when you're laying it flat, one of the nice things is if you have a more traditional style strap that's going to have that additional mobility and that pivot point to be able to go extremely flat laid, as you guys can see here. Ooh, man, this is a good looking watch. Again, guys, it's hard to argue with clean Arabic numerals and a very balanced and symmetrical layout, even with the little offsets and little black accents here and there. Again, I feel like they did a good job kind of balancing that look here. And yeah, it's not the brightest, most long-lasting lume, so maybe this, even though they're 3D applied indices, maybe they're not Lumicast applied. This might just be a lume coated indice versus it being an indice, forged from a block of lume. Just judging by the performance here. Again, nothing wrong with it, but it's also not anything, too outstanding to write home about. We'll give it a little supercharge there. Of course, this wasn't charged up by walking outside for about 10 minutes or so, which is going to be the best way to charge your lume. This was just, picking up light from being here in the studio. So you can see there, a little bit of supercharge gives you a nice idea of what that initial brightness can be like. And then you see that it does fade slowly over time. But this is a good looking piece, guys. I do dig that. But with that said, let's go ahead and get everything back on here and get into some closing thoughts. So guys, on the wrist, nice compact wear, perfect for comfortably disappearing on the wrist during high speed, low drag activities while still maintaining maximum legibility, right? So that is something, even in the smaller sizing, you're not giving up the data in terms of what you're trying to read, in terms of the timing, in terms of getting down to kind of even fractions of a second as you're looking at that outer chapter ring. So the nice thing is that the versatile design does help it transition really well between tactical and casual use cases. So this is definitely something within that everyday space, because I think it does dress up, I think to a bit of a nice kind of business casual kind of styling, but also it can be dressed down into a very, very casual style, right? Especially if you think about, you start putting this on various different NATO style nylon straps. In terms of model variants, do check the site links for current options availability. At the time of filming this is kind of the first release, and it is a special variation. Hopefully we'll see more of these in some other colorways or other setups, maybe with a bracelet. Ooh, a nice flat link or an H link would look very, very nice here. In terms of comparable models, I think from mainstream to microbrands, the everyday adventure kind of go anywhere, do anything, or GADA wristwatch space has been, all of the rage as of late, and even closed the gap on dive watches as kind of the default sports watch for many collectors. But at under $500, when you consider the specs, overall package, it's honestly kind of hard to even think of anything else that offers this much bang per buck, guys. Under $500, hardened case, high 4 hertz beating movement, nice smooth sweep, nice thin case, getting 2 straps out of the box, getting a nice kind of commemorative metal tin, presentation box. There's a lot there, I think, to enjoy. So for me, guys, bottom line, I'm really impressed with this one, from the specifications to the on-wrist experience, and even down to the packaging and overall value proposition as a potential consumer. The AVI-8 Covert is really the type of watch I would have loved during my time serving as an active duty U.S. Marine. All it really needs for me is like a steel flat link bracelet option and a solid micro adjustable clasp. And I think it'd be pretty close to perfect overall. And I could see them charging a lot more than $500 if they put that package together. So I think it would be well worth it. Obviously this with the extra straps, that's gonna, create a cost, but maybe you do a standardized version, with just the bracelet, and you make it a hardened bracelet with an adjustable clasp. If you could do that for under $1,000, that would be awesome. If you could regulate the movement, even better. If you really wanted to upsell this one, maybe you put an LJP movement inside and you regulate that even better. And then you're really talking like, wow, this could be still a nice value proposition at around $1,000 if they did all that. So, well, all that said, let me know what you all think down in the comments below. If you like the video, please would like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.